You've got to find people who are nearly as passionate as you are, because it is everything. You're going to pour so much of yourself into it. And as a founder, you're going to be super, super passionate about this thing that you're doing.
Welcome everyone to UpTech Report. This is our founder's journey. This is the second part of our interview. Very excited to have Lindsay again, CEO of Casted, with us. Again, UpTech Report is sponsored by TerraLeap. Learn how to leverage the power of video at terraleap.io. And in our first part of our discussion with Lindsay, it was really interesting to hear this new solution they're building, which is a B2B podcasting solution. So B2B focused, which I think has been lacking, which is the reason why you built it in the first place. So now I'm excited to hear more about your journey. How did you get to where you are today?
Sure. So we talked about kind of in part one, I started out, I've spent my whole career in marketing, right? So I'm one of those weirdos that actually went to school for marketing and has a master's degree in integrated marketing. I'm a marketing nerd. I'm kind of obsessed, which turns out is a good thing because, I as I was heading into what ended up being a founder's journey, I started a podcast as part of our overall content strategy at this global enterprise business that I was working with, and I was a marketing leader there. And I saw a problem and a huge opportunity to solve it. And that was in and around B2B podcasting. It's a huge opportunity. I don't have to tell you, you're a human. Anyone who's listening is a human, and podcasting is everywhere. But even within that, there's a huge amount of growth happening in B2B podcasting. And I knew that firsthand. I was one of those B2B podcasters, and there just wasn't the software. It just didn't exist to serve me or our teams. And so I set out to change that.
And you said actually, also in the first part, I asked, what would you wish you had known or you know now? And you said, just do it. Don't jump in. Don't be afraid. Now, making that leap from an employee or working inside of a company to now being the leader of an organization, that's a whole nother step. Mm-hmm. I'm curious of insights that you've learned of that process so far. First, funding. Any common mistakes that you think people have made, and any lessons learned there on getting funding, acquiring that to be able to launch?
Yeah, gosh, I think kind of zooming out from that, but also a huge part of that is a huge part of being a founder is just getting really, really comfortable being uncomfortable. And the second you learn anything, it changes, right? And I think that that's absolutely true for funding. It's you go into it, and if you've never done it before, you've never done it before. So how in the world do you know what a pitch is going to be like, or what the process is going to be like, or you're working with investors that do this all the time, and what does this signal mean versus this other one? And so as soon as you start to figure it out, hopefully you close the round and you move on, you get back into the business. And, and then the next round is going to be a little bit different because, Series A is different than seed and Series B is going to be different than Series A. So getting really, really comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I think that's possibly a mistake that founders make is feeling like they should have it all figured out, as opposed to just continuously looking to learn before even diving in, learning from others, and then continually learning from yourself and your own experiences, and just having that enough awareness to kind of step back and say, how is it going? How can I learn? How can I be better?
Now, once you have the funding, then building the right team is one of the next big steps. How big is the team now?
20. We've got 20 people.
And with that development, any recommendations or thoughts of how do you hire the right people when it's each hire is so crucial, and potential mistakes one could make in that effort?
For us and for me, even going back to identifying my co-founders, right? So I've got two co-founders, and from day one, it's been about passion. I didn't really realize that at the time, but continuing to hear myself as I was having conversations, you've always, but I think especially when you're starting a business, you have got to find people who are nearly as passionate as you are, because it is everything. You're going to pour so much of yourself into it. And as a founder, you're going to be super, super passionate about this thing that you're doing and this thing that you're building from nothing. And then your first step is to find partners that share that passion and share that vision. And then you're so right. Every person you add to the team has got to share that passion and that drive, because startups are hard and they're messy and they change, and you're asking a lot of people, and you're asking them to be flexible and adaptable and to just come along for the ride and to push hard. And unless they share that passion and that vision, it's going to be even more stressful than it needs to be.
You've gone after the mid-market enterprise arena. Any insights you can share for those who are thinking about going after that same market? The probably pros and cons to it as well. So what's your immediate, what you've learned over the past year or two going after that market?
Sure. So that's kind of where I've lived my whole career. And so I know it really well. In fact, I was our target audience, right? I was marketing leader at an enterprise SaaS business, and that was us. So I think my advice there, maybe it's not as specific to mid-market or enterprise, but it's more broadly to knowing your audience, is make sure, don't assume. Even that, so this is a good point. Even having lived for 15 years as my target audience, I didn't assume that my problem and my opinion and my perspective was universal. So I spent the first 6 weeks, 2 months interviewing. I talked to 75 or 100 different marketing leaders across B2B, some B2C even, mostly mid-market enterprise, but a lot of small business too, some with podcasts, some without, and just asked a ton of questions because I didn't want to assume that my experiences should be what drives the product. And certainly it should influence it, and I had a strong opinion. But if we were going to build something, I didn't want to do it in a vacuum. So I think that's super, super important, whether it's mid-market or enterprise, to do not assume you know your audience and make sure you know your audience.
And did you do that before or after the funding? Did like when you were insight gathering, or did you continue it through? How did that work?
So it was early days. And so we had some startup capital. We're part of High Alpha Venture Studio. And so we had kind of a nest egg to work with. And so those were my early days. And literally as I was doing interviews, one of my co-founders that heads up product was starting to build and starting to map out, roadmap and translating those interviews into what we should build. And then my other co-founder who heads up revenue was saying, okay, these are the pain points. This is our go-to-market strategy because this is our messaging and this is how we should be, approaching people. So those were that was the foundation, right? And then it continues, like never stop. Again, never assume you know your audience, and make sure you know your audience. So ever since, it's been, what kind of feedback can we get from our customers? How should that influence pipeline or roadmap, and how should that impact the way that we're approaching, prospects and even, our current customers?
What challenges do you see going into 2021 in the marketplace and the environment that we're in, COVID kind of sticking around? What do you see the challenges for you coming up?
Gosh, I think, I don't know if they're really specific to 2021. It's momentum has been a big part of our story since day one. I mean, jumping in, running fast, bringing in customers and revenue, and building a customer base, building out product, and continuing to be exciting and accelerating. And that's been interesting in 2020. We've done it. And I think 2021 is just keeping that momentum going. And that's again, part of a founder's journey is doing that no matter what, right? And looking at the indicators all around you outside the business, looking at what's happening inside the business, look at what's happening with your customers, and being able to see down the street and around the corners about what could happen and planning accordingly. And so, I have every intention of continuing the acceleration of our momentum, regardless of what 2021 throws at us. It's you don't even want to talk about it, right? It's like, let's let the calendar page turn, and let's just not say anything. Like, nobody look around, no sudden movements.
Let's keep moving forward.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of forward, last question for you. What kind of tech innovations do you predict we will see in the near term and long term, next year or two, and then 5-10 years?
Goodness. So I think it's like broadly speaking. So I think, I think that we're going to continue to see, 2020 has changed the world, obviously. It's an understatement. I think we're going to continue to see ways to connect people. People are wired for connections. Human to human connection is what we are literally wired for. And it's a basic human need, which makes it a basic business need. And businesses have struggled this year, obviously, again, understatement, with finding ways to continue to connect with their audiences and build and maintain and strengthen those relationships. And I think podcasting has been a great way to do that, which is why we're seeing such growth among B2B, podcasting. And I think in 2021, we'll see this groundswell, this wave that was already coming before 2020 that has really grown with the pandemic, continue to gain speed and to gain strength in 2021 as people say, okay, this is a really great way to connect with our audiences. This is a great way to fuel strategy. And it's something that the big names are doing, and some of the other companies that look to them for leadership will follow suit. So.
Well, thank you so much, Lindsay, for sharing your insight in this journey that you've been on. I appreciate the momentum and seeing where you guys go next. Definitely, everyone, check out part 1 of our interview to hear more about Casted, or go to casted.us to learn and get a demo and see how it works. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us. Our sponsor for today's episode is TerraLeap. If your company wants to learn how to better leverage the power of video to increase sales and marketing, head over to terraleap.io and learn about the new product, Customer Stories. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next time. Have you seen a company using AI, machine learning, or other technology to transform the way we live, work, and do business? Go to uptechreport.com and let us know.